Welcome to Rewilding Love. This season is with a couple on the brink of divorce.
This is episode number 4, Not Taking Things Personally.
I may have just made the biggest mistake of my life.
In any given moment, his vibe just changes, and it's like, boom, like you hate me all of a sudden.
Feisty she is.
I don't understand where things went wrong. But I didn't get married to get divorced.
She's ultimately sensing that there's more going on than meets the eye.
Is the juice worth the squeeze? You know, there's a lot of squeezing. I'm not getting much juice out of it.
I've put in the work in the last 2 years of working out 4 to 6 times a week to look good next to you. Like, you're welcome.
He only goes to the gym once a week. 52 times more than me in a year.
Each one of you is doing the absolute best you can in each moment.
I would have never thought to think of it that way.
Feelings. Oh, you must use your feelings.
We just can't control our thoughts. So because we can't control our thoughts, we can't control our feelings.
Boom! Nice going, sister.
Thank you.
You are listening to Rewilding Love with me, Angus Ross.
And me, Rohini Ross.
Rewilding Love is a podcast about relationships.
We believe that love never disappears completely in relationships. It can always be rewilded. Listen in as we guide a real couple back to their natural state of love.
Relax and enjoy the show.
This week, we're going to be sharing some excerpts from one of my sessions with Alicia to show the benefits of not taking things personally. But Angus, I think before we get into the session clips, it would be really helpful for us to talk about what we mean by not taking things personally, because we have an expanded meaning on that, wouldn't you say?
Yes, expanded meaning. I would say that this is probably the most difficult nut of all for our clients to swallow in terms of the leverage that we're looking for to get them to a place of healing.
Well, the typical definition of somebody taking something personally is when they interpret someone's remarks or actions as directed against them, when those remarks or actions weren't intended to be directed toward them, and they get upset and offended by that. But we actually take it one step further than that, and our definition would say that we never need to take someone's words or behaviors personally, even if they are directed towards us, because whatever their behavior is always a reflection of their state of mind, and it's really nothing to do with us, even if they are directing it toward us. Does that make sense?
Or does it make sense to me?
Yes.
Or does it make sense to the audience?
I can't talk to the audience. Does it make sense to you?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, it's a radical change in optics. It's seeing that in actual fact, it's the other person who's suffering because they're suffering from their state of mind. They got themselves into a low mood and they're kind of really acting out from that place. So if we can really harness that understanding, then in actual fact, that eases our suffering because we're not taking it personally. And even actually presents us with the opportunity, we might even entertain some compassion for that person. So I remember the other day that my eldest daughter got really mad at me, got really angry because I didn't pick up the dog poo in the garden, and I said that I would. And I could have taken that really personally at the time because she was pretty mad. But I could see that she, for whatever reason, had got herself into a bit of a low mood. And in a sense, I was able to see the innocence there, and I felt a sense of compassion, and didn't go into that sort of usual or typical pathway of blame. I just let it go. So that would be an example of me not taking it, not meaning to pat myself on the back too hard, but me not taking it personally.
Bravo
to me.
So this next clip that we're going to play is actually an example of Alicia not taking something personally. And it's really demonstrating how she has this capacity. And so we're sharing it just as an example of where she has perspective, where she can see that what Mateo's saying isn't about her. So we'll hear from her now.
He definitely has judged my body a lot before. And I don't take offense to it because I think I'm a mentally strong person.
Mm-hmm. But judged you as not being in shape? Or
or like looking at us both in the mirror and being like, wow, we should really get in the gym and this and that. And then now that I have been in great shape now, better than I've ever been in my entire life, to be honest with you, very happy with my body and everything. And yes, there are definitely places that I can improve on, of course.
Always,
I mean, you can always do that. But this past week, I had just gotten back from spin class and I was getting ready to get in the shower. And he had just gone to his trainer. He's only going once a week of any workouts. And that's, I know, something that's been bugging him because he keeps saying he wants to be like in shape and a better diet, blah, blah, blah. But then turns to me and goes, you should consider going to a personal trainer. You know, you can be a little bit more fit. Or maybe he didn't say a little bit more fit, but something along those lines. And I just like, in my head, I'm just like, are you serious right now? And the way that I approach it, I was like, yeah, you know what? I actually thought about that. Maybe, would you be interested in doing it with me? And then that way we could cut down the cost, because like that could be fun. At least we'll do like once a day.
Right.
I don't take offense to that stuff because I'm like, I'm just happy with what I look like.
I
really don't care.
Yeah.
And I've also put in the work in the last 2 years of working out 4 to 6 times a week to look good next to you. Like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Wow, I do not know what I would do if you suddenly took it upon yourself to criticize some aspect of my body and challenged my body image in some way. I don't know what I would do. I'd be very upset.
So you would take it personally?
I think I'd take it very personally. So good for her. Kudos for her for actually not rising to the bait, as it were.
Yeah, that is quite unique. I don't know that I would be able to handle it either.
No. And then, you know, she obviously has this great sense of self in this one area of her life. And then I guess there are some frailties in other areas that have, you know, that I guess we get to look at and hear about.
Well, I think that's true for all of us, that we all have these areas of our life where we see things very clearly. We have perspective. We recognize it's not personal. We recognize that we're okay and we're fine. And then we have these other areas of our life where we get caught up. We take things more seriously. We take it more personally, and we get really insecure.
Yeah. And he only goes to the gym once a week. 52 times more than me in a year, I might say.
Me too. I wonder what his body looks like.
Well, I don't know that you should be checking out his body.
I didn't. That's what I'm wondering.
Shouldn't even be wondering.
Well, I'm just curious, given his focus on her.
Okay.
In the next segment, sorry, were you done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. In the next segment, I lay a little bit of the foundation in terms of how the work is going to be going for these ongoing sessions. And then we get to hear a little bit from Alicia about sort of where she does get caught up.
The way that we're working together, I'm going to, share things with you that are educational and point you in the direction of what you already know inside of you. So it's like you have your own wisdom and you're the expert in yourself and your relationship. But what happens is when you get kind of, a lot of insecure thinking going on and you get stirred up, then that gets really noisy and it's harder to hear what you really know in your heart or what you really know to be true.
So when that happens, the insecurity that I was expressing that has come about is from him telling me oh, I don't know if, I want this to be my life forever, or I'm uncertain about a relationship. That's where those insecurities start coming, because I'm like, we were good 5 seconds ago, what the hell?
Yeah.
So you can hear in what she just said that it looks to Alicia like Mateo is responsible for her feelings of insecurity, that's where they're coming from. She doesn't recognize that they're coming from inside of herself at this point.
I know. What a cad and a bounder.
That's the opposite point that I'm trying to make.
I know, I'm trying to amplify your opposite point.
No, that's the opposite of what I'm trying to say.
That he's not a cat and a bounder.
I'm saying that he may be a cat or a bounder, but it's not him being a cat or a bounder that is causing her to feel insecure.
I know, I'm being ironic.
I don't understand
That's
your
because
irony.
you're North American. You don't understand irony.
Can you explain?
I am trying to point out that obviously he's not a cat and a bounder. That's something that she's made up in her imagination. She's making him responsible for her suffering. So therefore, through that lens, he is a cat and a bounder. So therefore, I am saying, what a cat and a bounder from that perspective. Irony.
I still don't get it.
What do you mean you don't get it?
So, from my perspective, he could be a cat and a bounder, which he might be, but it still doesn't cause her suffering.
Right. So he may very well be a cat and a bounder, and she still doesn't need to take that personally.
That's right.
And she could be totally inventing the fact that he is a cat and a bounder.
It could be one of those options. But would you say that when you said he was a cat and a bounder, that was you being sarcastic?
Yes, probably would be a better way to frame it.
Okay, I didn't get that point.
Okay. Well, I'm terribly sorry.
Well, we can move along now.
Okay. Carry on.
What we're going to be looking at going forward is how to actually empower her. I'm not going to be condoning his behavior or saying that what he's doing is okay or kind, but I ultimately want to free her from feeling that he has the capacity to cause her to feel insecure.
Yeah, and we're not talking about giving her boxing gloves and giving her the tools and means to fight back in an adversarial way.
No, is that what you think of when I say empowering her?
I don't know. Some people might think that.
I'm talking about her being empowered from within, where she's able to feel okay independent of what his behavior is.
Yes, I got that.
Like he's even said like, okay, I'm gonna like right before we decided to come here, or whatever, he had sent me like a text like, oh, I'm gonna move out at the end of the month, blah blah blah, and in the hopes that nothing comes of it because therapy was successful. I'm like, you're threatening me.
Yeah.
And that's playing with my head, and that's this emotional roller coaster you put me on.
So we're going to address that, and no one's perfect.
No.
So what I want to say, the more that you can see that when he's doing that, that's a reflection of his fear in the moment and his state of mind, the less you're going to take it personally. And here's a great example. There would be other women that their husband would say to them something about their body, and they would get totally insecure. That doesn't happen to you. The reason that doesn't happen to you is because you don't take it personally. You see like, oh, that's his problem, I'm fine, right? That's the big deal. But with this other thing, and you could say, well, of course I get upset about it, but it's not of course. If you're able to start to see like when he's saying those kinds of things, when he's threatening you, and he's, doing any of that, that's a reflection of his state of mind. And it actually doesn't mean anything about the relationship. It actually doesn't mean anything about his love for you. And it absolutely doesn't mean anything about you. The more you can see that, the more neutral you're going to be when he kind of gets into that disturbed state internally. So it's twofold. Obviously, Angus and I are going to address that because it's not ideal.
Right.
But because I don't know what his learning curve is going to look like, he might regress. That can happen.
Right.
And he might get back into that state. But if you see it for what it is, it doesn't have to impact you in the same way. And oh, he's just really freaked out right now, and he's internally disturbed. And when he gets scared, he says things like that. All it means is that he's scared in that moment.
I can absolutely see that. I think from the way that I was definitely approaching it is like the whole body image thing. It's like, okay, whatever, it's just like my body, that's me. But like when it comes to our relationship, like that's something that's very serious to me, and that's where then I'm getting put into like rocky, territory.
And so does that help you to kind of see, like, it's actually no different than the body thing?
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have never thought to think of it that way.
Right. That's good. So that's the other thing that we're looking for in this time together is, what haven't you thought of before? Like, that's a new
definitely one
thought.
of them,
Yeah,
yes.
so that's really good. And that will be really helpful, because you're going to be able to, like, as you said, relationships, you know, you're with another person, and another person is going to have their moods that go up and down, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have their insecurities, their frailties, their weaknesses. So our intention is for both of you to be on more common ground by the time you leave here. But you're both still going to be the same people.
Yeah.
You're going to have the same frailties, but hopefully they won't come up as much, but they're probably going to come up. So what you can see from what you know about your husband is that when he gets insecure, he kind of lashes out at you.
Yeah.
He blames you.
100%.
He points the finger at you. Now, as much as I'd like to say, oh, we can fix that,
Right.
the actual benefit to the relationship is for you to become immune to that. So I'm not saying it's okay, and I'm not saying I don't want that to decrease, but
Right.
what's actually really going to help the relationship is when you see that for what it is, and it's not taken personally, and so you don't get destabilized.
Yeah, I would love to get there for sure.
Yeah. Well, you being able to see it and say, I hadn't thought of it that way, like, that's you getting there. Like, that's you seeing it. Like, the next time that, I mean, again, I don't want it to happen, but like I said, you know, people are human. But the next time something like that happens,
Yeah.
you're going to remember we had this conversation, and you'll be like, oh, he's destabilized.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because like last night, like when I got really upset over all this stuff or whatever, and we spoke about like him moving out thing, it like dawned on me. I'm like, crying wolf. Like, you're crying wolf right now. And it's to throw me out of my orbit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't even know that it's that intentional. I don't know. I can't read his mind, but I don't even think it's that intentional. Most people, this is just knowing people, not knowing him, but knowing people. It's like when people get scared and they don't understand that they're scared, and they just try to fix their experience. So if somebody's having an experience that feels intense and they're scared by the intensity of that experience, they try to fix it. And so one of the ways that people try to fix their experience, not a good way, but one of the ways that people do it is they start to lash out at somebody else, or they start to place blame elsewhere as a way to try and fix what's going on internally. Yeah. It doesn't work.
No.
It makes a negative downward spiral. But it's the best attempt that they can do in that moment. Okay. And this is something that Angus is going to be talking about too. So for both of you to really get on board with that, each one of you, and you can see this for yourself, each one of you is doing the absolute best you can in each moment.
Boom! Nice going, sister.
Thank you. You mean she had an insight?
Yeah, that's so cool. That's going to be a hard act to follow now for me too.
Well, he had more of a slow burn on his insight unfolding.
I guess so, but that was fantastic. She really saw something, and you could see how her spirits lifted as she got that sense of what she was seeing.
Yeah, well, what you're pointing out is when she said that comment, I've never thought about it that way before, right?
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for our listeners to recognize that when people step into new territory and the unknown, it usually feels that way, that it's new and fresh and they haven't seen it that way before.
Yeah, and it's all about the cadence in the voice. There could be I never really thought about it like that way, and was kind of dismissive, but this was like, I never really thought about it like that way before.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It really landed for her. I loved that.
Yeah. And I love that she was able to feel some of that possibility, that sense of possibility, that this area that she was taking so seriously didn't have to be taken so seriously, that she could see that she already has the resilience inside of her related to other comments that he makes. But these comments about leaving, they were like kryptonite to her.
Yeah, and you could really get a sense of the optimism that was coming into play for her at that point, and beyond that point too.
And I want to be really clear, and I did say it once in this segment, but I want to be very clear that I am not condoning bad behavior. if he is being unkind to her or cruel to her, I'm not saying that's okay, just put up with it. What I am saying is that it doesn't mean anything about her, so that she can have more internal stability, more authentic empowerment. And from that place where she's not feeling victimized and not suffering, she will make whatever choices are best for her in that relationship.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I guess it's also a case of them not feeling like they're a doormat. She could think, I guess quite often you hear clients say, yeah, but that makes me feel like such a doormat. And really, actually, it's not a doormat. You get to the higher ground. It's actually empowering to see that this other person is suffering. And you are not, as the case may be. It's all about their state of mind. It's nothing to do with you. So it's actually like a superpower in a sense.
It is. It's really empowering. And I just want to make that clear. And I love that you use that phrase doormat, because that's the opposite of what I'm saying. And from that place of inner stability, perspective, calm, it's up to her whether she chooses to be in the relationship or not. And each client obviously will make their own choice based on that. That's not my job to tell them what to do, but it's getting to that place of inner empowerment where those choices are best made, rather than running away out of reactivity or staying out of fear of not being able to leave. It's finding that place of inner equilibrium and peace of mind. And then from there, from that place of love, ultimately making the choice about the relationship.
All aces, baby.
All right, well, let's hear a little bit more.
So what's been happening is that, he's been, upset, destabilized, you've been upset, destabilized, you've interacted, and then he's definitely taking that personally. Mm-hmm. You're sometimes taking it personally. Mm-hmm. And you're both getting more and more destabilized. Yep. So as you both get more and more destabilized, the quality of feeling in the relationship goes down. Yep. Right? So it's a direct relationship. The more destabilized you get, the feeling in the relationship goes down. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is the direct causation of that isn't clear. And so because if it was clear, you'd be like, oh, we just need to settle down and we'd be fine. Yeah. But it's looking like, well, no, I need to leave, or he needs to be different, or, all these other things need to get fixed. Yep. In order for the feeling to come back into the relationship. Right. And what I'm saying is like, well, actually, it's a whole lot more simple than that. And that it's really about each one of you getting more stable internally, and naturally, you don't even have to work at it. Naturally, the feelings come back in. So what's your reaction to what I'm saying?
That I want to do that?
Yeah. And what are your thoughts about, like, I know that you want to, it's appealing, it resonates, but what are your thoughts about the practicalities of that?
I mean, I think it's very practical. I think it's like approaches that, like I said, I've never thought of. Yeah. I think going back to the whole thing of, the body image versus and looking at it in the same perspective as the leaving thing, or when mm-hmm. he's threatened me, I think that does somewhat give me stability. It does calm me in a sense to think that all right, you're just going through something, and I get that I'm a stronger person, I can handle a lot more, and it's not a perspective I ever thought that I should view it as. Because I always thought, obviously that's very serious. Your relationship. You take that serious. I'm not going to take that seriously. Yeah. But I'm going to take that seriously. Yeah. What I'm saying is, when he's destabilized, you can't take anything he says seriously. Yeah. And the same goes for him too, when you're destabilized. And he's taking what you're saying very seriously when you're upset. 100%. Right? And I've always said to him, I was like, well, I didn't mean it that way. I was just it was in the heat of the moment. And then it just remains with him. And it's what? But what? You've said things you don't mean. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it may have to start, even just with me understanding that, maybe it'll transpire as well, because it's not affecting me. Then maybe then he'll see that that's not going to work. It will fizzle out. Yeah. What happens is when he says that, and you take it he says that, he's destabilized, he says that. I take it like the atomic bomb. Yeah, you take it seriously. And then
you're now all stirred up and you say whatever you say, and then it's like that escalation happens. But
or internalize it and then it's eating me up
but
alive.
Yeah, but even if it doesn't be expressed, it's still going up
For sure.
and it will eventually come out in some way, right?
Which is what happened last night.
Exactly. But look at it this way then. So he's getting all, you're fine, you're feeling good, you're fine. He's all stirred up. You have no control over that. May have absolutely nothing to do with you. He drops the bomb and you're like, oh, he's really suffering. This is what he does when he's suffering. You don't go up here. You stay down here. He's more likely to just come back down rather than each one of you escalating.
Yeah.
So that's where it's not that you're responsible for what he does. You're not responsible for him coming back down and settling, but it's just how it works because we're all designed to settle.
Yeah.
Like nobody enjoys being in a head up, escalated state of mind. Nobody likes that. And we never stay there forever. We get there, we stay there for as long as we stay there, and then we come back down. So what's been happening is like there's been someone's lighting the match, and then gasoline's been thrown on the match, and then more gasoline's been thrown on the match. So it's like now someone can light the match, whether it's you or whether it's him, and the other person can have a much better chance of not throwing gasoline on that match. And what's the match going to do? It's just going to go out.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to go out not with a huge bang, it's just going to fizzle out. Now that is what decreases volatility in relationships. And volatility and the escalation that you're describing, it's painful because we say things that we, like you say, we say things that we don't mean. We get desperate and we start to think of desperate measures, and then our mind is filled with all of that because now we got to figure out, well, what if he is leaving me, or how am I going to leave her? Or, maybe I don't want to be married. Like then your mind is filled up with all that content that you're now taking seriously.
Yeah.
So in this section, I'm doing my best to help Alicia see how the conflict escalates in the relationship and how that damages rapport and what the possibilities are for her to actually be able to get out of that dynamic that she's in with Mateo and actually have that whole dynamic shift just by her choosing not to engage with it.
Yeah, in a sense, I guess the invitation is for her to go to the higher ground and from the point of view of seeing how he's caught up, he's suffering, and that if she engages with him at that level, she just comes down to that level, and they both get locked into the suffering together.
And I think she's pretty clear that she can be very volatile too, so it's not like he's the only one that's engaging from a destabilized place. It sounds like they both engage from that place. And so for her to be able to see the damage that does, and that really all that's needed is to be able to wait out the emotional storm, and from that place of inner calm, they can then have conversations that don't devolve into more conflict, and hopefully see what the possibilities are that are available to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do remain hopeful because it seems like she's seen something. And now it's a case of her being able to try this on for size and see the fruits of that.
Absolutely. In this next section, I'm really emphasizing for Alicia the importance of her being able to see something for herself that will allow her to have a different experience in the relationship, even if Mateo is not able to make the same level of change that she does. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not hopeful for Mateo and that I'm not expecting him to have learnings and transformation as well, but I really want her to see how her experience can be different, even if he doesn't significantly change, because her experience is coming from inside of herself, and it's coming from how she's relating to her own thoughts, and that she has the ability to stabilize and to connect with her own sense of inner well-being and peace independently of him. And to me, that's really important because I want her to realize that she has that inner freedom and that she has that capacity.
So there's two parts to this. One is, and it seems like this is, a really key point from this first session, is for you to just start to see, because I don't know what kind of state of mind he's going to be in when he leaves that session, right?
Right.
He might be more stirred up, he might not be, we don't know. So let's say he's stirred up. Let's say he's like, I can't believe Angus, like, I'm not saying he will.
Right.
Like, I can't believe Angus said this to me, or what is the point of being here? I think I'm just going to leave now, like, just hypothetically, right? From this conversation, you can be like, oh, he's just really scared.
Yeah.
He's feeling really insecure. It's not about you. You don't have to take anything he's saying seriously in that moment.
Yeah.
And from that observation, you will relate to that. You relate to yourself differently, and you relate to him differently. And you will feel better, right? Because when you don't take things personally, and when you kind of have perspective, like, you might even feel compassion for him.
Yeah.
Right? You might be like, God, he's really struggling. You don't know what you'll see. But I just want you to recognize his state of mind, recognizing that when he's behaving in a certain way, that's a reflection of his state of mind. And if he's got a stirred up state of mind, that's an indicator to not take what he's saying seriously. Now, the same is true for you. So just as much as I want you to kind of be able to see his state of mind and know whether you want to take what he's saying seriously or not, and I don't mean disrespectful.
Right.
I don't mean like, oh, I'm not going to take anything you say. It's just an internal recognition.
Right.
He's just a little crazy right now, and take everything he says with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
The same is true for our own state of mind. If we start to recognize when our own state of mind gets sped up, we start to see when we need to take our thinking seriously and when we don't.
Yeah.
So for you, when you're, what I'm hearing is there can be kind of this build that happens. So when you're starting to build, what will interrupt the build is actually not his behavior. It's actually going to be you realizing that you're getting stirred up and that you don't need to take all these thoughts that you're having seriously.
That definitely happens. Like, I catch myself telling myself, like, okay, stop, you're overthinking.
Yeah.
Let it go.
So you recognize it.
I've recognized, before I've never have.
Right.
Now I'm recognizing
Right.
it. I want to recognize it more.
You'll get better.
But I do catch myself in moments,
Yes.
like driving to work or taking out the trash and being like, you're overthinking, just stop.
Yes,
Just stop.
That's great. So you're already seeing that, and it will just naturally, you'll see it more. Because what happens is we get more sensitive to the negative feelings that come up with a stirred up state of mind. So before, when you didn't even realize, you would be in the feeling of a stirred up state of mind and not even know it.
Yeah.
So now you're driving to work and your feelings are letting you know, like, oh, I'm overthinking. Stop it. Mm-hmm. So you're getting more sensitive to that and realizing, like, oh, I'm going down that rabbit hole. I shouldn't go down there.
100%.
So just you're on the right track, and you're just going to keep seeing more related to that. So the more you see about that, the less you're going to get escalated, and the less likely there's going to be blowouts between the two of you, because you won't get to the place where you need to blow out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying never,
right.
But it'll be less often. And when it does happen, like let's say last night, for example, when you're able to see it through the understanding of you were really stirred up,
yeah.
You were taking your thinking seriously,
yeah.
You were taking what he was saying personally, and your behavior made sense based on how you were seeing it.
Yeah.
But today you have a bigger perspective, and you can see like, oh, well, I was, that was my stirred up thinking that I was reacting from. It's not really the perspective that you would see in this moment.
What I'm hoping Alicia is taking on board here is how she can use her feelings as a signal to help her understand what her quality of thinking is in the moment, what her state of mind is. And it's a really simple way for her to know how she's doing and whether or not she needs to take that break, needs to let herself settle. And the more she's willing to use her feelings as that signal, the easier it is for her to recognize earlier and earlier when she needs to practice self-care, when she needs to let her mind relax. And so that's the main piece that I hope she takes away, is that she has this built-in feedback mechanism that she carries everywhere with her, and that will help guide her in a way that will allow her to not engage in the volatility in the same way that she has been.
Feelings. Oh, you must use your feelings.
Is that
I
all
like
you have to
that.
say?
I like that. That's the indicator that she's looking for to know when she's out of balance or going south in her state of mind. Check those feelings.
Absolutely. And they never lie. Our feelings don't lie to us. And we can all trust them. I mean, this isn't just for her. This is for every single one of us, myself included. And the more attuned we become, the more sensitive we become, the more we recognize when we're getting stirred up. And I'm not talking about being hypervigilant, about paying attention to feelings all the time. What I'm recommending to her is for her to just be able to notice, not that she needs to be checking in every 10 seconds, but just to get used to the feeling of when she's not in a place of neutral, when she's starting to leave that territory and heading to a more sped up place in her mind, that she is able to detect that on a feeling level so that she can then course correct earlier rather than later.
It's like on our new car, we have the steering column has the steering wheel will vibrate when we go out of lane. It's like you start to see what those little indicators are that show you know she's getting out of lane. I think for me, actually, I've noticed for myself that if I get anxious or I get really anxious and I get really sped up, I tend to get kind of a tight chest. And that for me that's my indicator. That's my steering column vibrating. And then I know to kind of take my foot off the gas in a way.
And that means letting your mind relax. Like taking your foot off the gas is letting your mind settle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess my only question would be like, for instance, like yesterday being Valentine's Day and like seeing like not and no attention from it. Mm-hmm. Like how would I approach that without being like, well, that was mean, or like now I'm insecure about those things?
Well, what I would say is like whenever you're feeling hurt, the more that you can see that feeling of hurt is a reflection of you taking something personally. And it's not actually a reflection of what he's doing. Like, because when he said his explanation of that, it was kind of like, I don't want to lead her on. Like, there's kindness in that, right? So it wasn't, I'm doing this as a F you to hurt her. He's like, I don't want to lead her on, so I'm not going to give her mixed messages. I hear the kindness in that. So there was a misunderstanding that was going on inside of you, making it mean this, this, and this, when actually he was doing it out of his own logic of what made sense to him, not to be mean. So your hurt wasn't actually coming from what he was doing. It was coming from the meaning that you were giving it. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so your hurt, you don't have control. Like one of the things that you said in the other room, which I don't necessarily, I don't agree with, and I think it might be helpful to talk about it because I think it might be holding Gonzo to a standard that's just not reasonable. But you said we can choose how we feel. And we may be able to influence that. Like I absolutely agree that if, I realize I'm going down that rabbit hole of negative thinking and I wake up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go down there. Like
right.
There's some influence there. But what about those times when I don't even realize I'm in the rabbit hole? I don't really have a choice then.
Yeah.
Right? And so just like that example from last night, like you were hurt. It didn't feel like you had a choice about being hurt. So you didn't really get to choose how you felt. It just occurred to you. Right? So I think having that be understood is just a lot more humane. Mm-hmm. And then you're not holding yourself to a standard that you should always be feeling good or always able to control your feelings. And you're also not holding him to that standard either because, it's to me, it's just an unreasonable expectation for yourself or for him, right. For any human being, really. Right. We just can't control our thoughts. So because we can't control our thoughts, we can't control our feelings because they come from our thoughts. But what you can recognize is, like, for example, using yesterday's Valentine's Day incident, when you're feeling hurt, the more that you can see, like, oh, this is a reflection of my state of mind. It's coming from me. It's not actually coming from him. Then there's going to be more kindness to letting yourself settle and addressing it once you're a little bit more clear. Does that make sense? What's your I can see your face kind of changing when I'm talking with you.
Just like if I had approached it differently, like maybe he could have seen like it did hurt my feelings.
Yeah. But I'm not saying this so you're going to be hard on yourself.
No, I know.
Yeah, yeah. So I really want you to
yeah,
hear that.
no, it's just like, it's more so just like, I wish I would have approached it that way.
Well, now you're seeing the possibility of approaching it in a different way. You didn't see that then. So you couldn't have done that then. But the good news is a learning, you're going to be able to see that going forward.
Yeah.
Right? So you're like, oh, you're caught up in your thinking, you're feeling hurt. You'll be able to see like, oh, there's an opportunity for me to take care of myself here and realize I'm getting caught up in my own story. And then approach it in a different way and probably get a different result.
Yeah.
And to me, that's going to be the theme of what's going on between the two of you, is that the way that you've been trying to approach things with him has not been working. But now you're seeing a possibility for how you might approach things differently that would probably get a different result.
Yeah, and I feel like that could, reflect across the board of like every relationship in my life.
Oh, well, and you know what? That realization, when you see something generic like that, that's huge. Like you're seeing something really profound, because it's now you're recognizing this is something that I do as a general thing.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the opportunity for something to be different. And so that sort of generalized different way of being is going to change every area of your life.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I loved that she got to the point where she was able to see that the way that she relates to Mateo is not specific to him. She was able to step far enough back and recognize that the way she's showing up there also relates to how she shows up in other relationships in her life. And I think that when a client is able to take that step back and see the big picture in that way, I feel really hopeful, because it's no longer about the right and wrong in the relationship. She's actually reflecting on how she shows up. And when she sees how there's similarities in all areas of her life, that means that she's really looking at this in a much more universal way, a much more philosophical way. And so I feel quite excited that she's actually having a significant shift related to this.
Yeah, that was the pivotal moment for me too. It's actually, they've both been somewhat very narrow in their focus on the relationship, but I just felt in that moment she just really pulled back and got the wide shot, got the full perspective of what this understanding is pointing to. And I've had that experience with other clients. They see the universality of it, as you say, and that's like, yeah, booyah, we got where we needed to get to, and it's really exciting actually as a coach just to sort of witness that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And there were two other points that I just want to point out. Two other themes that I think are important, and one of them is something that we're going to be revisiting over and over again. It's something that can be difficult for people to really see and recognize how it shows up in their life. But that point is how we don't feel the outside circumstance. We feel what we're relating to in our own mind. And so this is a 180-degree shift from where she's been looking at Mateo as the source of her suffering. He's been responsible for how she feels. And here I am saying, well, actually, Mateo is a circumstance and you're not experiencing that. Everything you experience comes through the filter of your own thoughts. that's what you're identifying with, and you're making that meaning up. It's not coming from him. And I really appreciate how open-minded she was and how able she was to hear that in that moment. There wasn't any pushback. But I think this is a pivotal point for that empowerment piece for anybody to be able to see that we experience what we're identifying with in our own mind. That means that we can no longer be a victim to what's happening outside of us. That doesn't mean, as I've said earlier, that we have to stay in the situation, that we can't make changes, but to understand that our experience comes from inside of us is actually really liberating.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a quantum shift in consciousness, so much so that she's probably gonna go in and out of this understanding from this point forward, and maybe in a sense, as we all do. But she's seen a lot, and it's going to take a while probably for this to really anchor in. But I feel, I feel really optimistic. It's awesome that you got to that place with her.
And the other point that I think is really key, because there can be a misunderstanding that what I'm talking about is just another way to manage your thoughts and feelings. And I wanted to make that really clear to her, that this understanding that I'm sharing is not about giving her the capacity to choose what feelings she has, to choose what thoughts she has. It's so much work to try and manage our experience and try and manage our thoughts. It's ultimately counterproductive because it's so exhausting and we get stressed out. And I'm saying this from firsthand experience. It's not like I haven't tried this myself. So I really wanted her to understand that this wasn't about being able to choose to be in a good feeling all the time, that actually the greater freedom and the greater blessing is to see that feelings come and go, and we don't need to control them because we're safe no matter what feeling we're having. So it's not as if Mateo should be feeling better and he should be working at feeling better, or that she should be more positive and less angry. It's that whatever feelings are present, when we're open and relaxed around them, they just come and they go, like the weather comes and goes. And there's no need to fix them or change them. And when we're open around our feelings, when we're not scared by them, there's so much less acting out from a reactive state, because we understand that we're caught up, that we're in a stirred up state of mind, that the intensity of the emotions are going to come and they're going to go. The intensity is going to come and it's going to go. And there's no need to act from that place to feel better, because we're naturally designed to have emotions move through us. And all we need to do is allow that natural design to do what it does. And ultimately, we're going to come back to a place of stability and peace and balance within ourselves. And the more we let go and don't try to manage our experience, the quicker that seems to happen.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's not about a technique or a process. There's no magic bullet. It is an understanding that it is an understanding, and realizing that's as simple as that. Yeah,
it's true. And the other thing I noticed in her, and I don't know if you noticed it, Angus, but she really started to settle. I'm going to just include a little clip where she speaks to that. But, we're doing the podcast looking at the recordings. And when you look at recordings in the software, you see the volume, the decibel level of what a person's speaking by these white lines. And I can see, based on her decibel level, from how the session progresses, that at this point in the session, she's much softer, quieter, more settled. And that, to me, is an indicator that she's getting more reflective. Her nervous system is settling down. She's really listening, and she's not in the fight, flight, or freeze mode. She's just getting more relaxed, calm, balanced, and receptive.
Oh, it's like you've got a whole new science at your disposal to track your client's state of well-being.
I just noticed it.
I mean, I definitely feel like a sense of calmness, and just like opening up my head to like just viewing things differently. Like I know that I can recognize that I can feel a certain way,
Yeah.
but maybe I don't have to like express it immediately, so that I can like calm down from it and then see
That's
it correctly.
right. Yeah, your feeling state is going to come and it's going to go.
Yeah.
And when you see that and you recognize, like, oh, it's not about immediately addressing this thing with him because I'm actually feeling my own state of mind
Yeah.
in this moment, you'll be more likely to ride out that wave and then address it once you're more settled.
Yeah, I really see what you mean. She's really come back down to earth here. She started off way out in the stratosphere and she's really settled down. It's really lovely to see.
Yeah, and hopefully she'll recognize that feeling state for herself and get more familiar with it and comfortable with it, and it'll be easier to come back to again and again and again.
Yeah, hallelujah.
You know, I can really relate to Alicia. I have a lot of empathy and compassion for her and how personally she's been taking Mateo's threats to leave. And, you know, the reason why is because I remember how sensitive I used to be in our relationship and how personally I would take your upset. And it's really wonderful to be able to have a new foundation inside of myself at this point where I'm more resilient in the face of my emotions and in the face of your emotions. And I'm really hoping that Alicia can take that on board for herself. And ultimately, what allowed me to make that shift was that I was able to see how you weren't responsible for how I was feeling. I was able to see how much noise I had going on in my head that was self-deprecating, that was painful, and that even though maybe you would be angry, that would be what I would be listening to. It wasn't your anger that was causing me to feel upset. It was all of the thoughts telling me that I needed to be better. I wasn't good enough. If I was a better woman, wife, that you wouldn't be angry in that moment. And it ultimately was my own mind that was taking me down. And when I got to have some distance from that through understanding that I was feeling my own thoughts, I was able to have perspective on them in a way that they didn't grip me in the same way. And I was able to drop into deeper feelings of quiet and peace inside of myself. And in that space, I realized I felt safe, I felt okay, I felt good enough. And that was not coming from outside of me. It was 100% coming from me experiencing that from within myself. That could not be given to me. And in that experience, it completely shifted my ability to stay stable in the face of other things going on in my life, in the face of, things going on at work or things going on with you in our relationship. And it's such a different foundation that I now live within that I'm so grateful for. And I'm hoping that she's able to get a taste of that and live more fully into that so that she can have that as a foundation for herself. And ultimately, the reason that we're doing this podcast is that we're hoping that everybody who listens gets a taste of that and finds that space within themselves more fully so that, you as a listener can live more from there in your life too. Thank you so much for listening to Rewilding Love. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know by subscribing on iTunes, and we would love for you to leave a review there.
iTunes reviews will steer people to this podcast who need help with their relationships.
If you would like to learn more about our work and our online Rewilding community, please visit our website, therewilders.org.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week.